All right. Well, welcome everybody. Glad you could join us tonight. Thank you for working with me with having to change the date of the webinar. It was either that or, I'm sorry. It just got a little, okay, there we go. It was either that or having to do it next weekend. So I'm glad you could work with me and we could do it today. So here we are. This is the bonus module. We're going to be talking about marketing your services. And I know a lot of you are in the veterinary field and may want to help your practice in this area and letting them know that you do have people now that can offer that support. But especially in an area with pet loss, you really need to be careful of how you do it. You want to get your contact information out there. You want to get your message out there because there are people who are going to say, still, even though it's better than when I first started doing this work, I never knew that was out there. I never knew this service even existed. So our goals for today, come on, computer, are a few things. We're going to talk about how you define your services, how you create your marketing materials, how to get your message out there, and then how do you determine your value and price. In terms of defining your services, you can't market a service to your clients until you really have clearly defined what it is that you want to offer. The majority of the population, I would say, still have not heard. I think it's somewhat regional still. I mean, when I lived in California, it was much more known about than in New Jersey, which kind of surprises me because I'm not that far from the city, but still. There are a lot of people who never heard of a pet loss bereavement specialist, and you're going to need to explain what it is that you do and what it is that you offer. When I first started doing this, a lot of people thought I was an in-home euthanasia vet. You're going to want to, at some point, practice your elevator speech, and we'll talk more about that later. You're going to want to have business cards. I carry mine wherever I go. It's nice being able to have something with your name, your company name out there. So the person doesn't have to just remember your contact information after you walk away. When we talk about defining our services, the question on the slide is really probably the biggest thing. You need to do some real self-evaluation in order to offer the best services that you can. For example, one of my strengths is that I do a good job with public presentations. I enjoy talking to people about pet loss. I'm very comfortable in front of a group. I can think on my feet quickly. I have many years of experience doing it in this field and in my last career, so I enjoy offering workshops. I also am very passionate about helping people begin to heal from their losses. And what I will tell you from being in this profession and in other professions as well is what I know for sure is that when you love something and when you have a passion for it, it really does show through. People see it, they're attracted to you and what you're offering. In all honesty, if you find what you want to do, have a passion for doing it, that's the best marketing you can do because people will see it in you, they'll feel it in you. Because the opposite is true as well. I'm sure many of you have been in that store, have called for that service where you can just get people, you can see they don't care. They'll take their time getting to you. They'll look annoyed. So take the time to do some soul searching so that you can figure out what you want to do and what you would prefer not to do. So again, how do we do that? Well, you have to think about what services do you want to offer. You need to ask yourself how you can best serve your clients by offering the services that you're interested, but also that fit into your life. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Sure, we're all going into this profession, but there are a lot of avenues. There is speaking, there is counseling. So it's important to determine what you want to do. You may feel that you have a niche, like perhaps you want to focus on people who are anticipating a loss. Find those things, and it doesn't have to be just one thing. Find the things that you want to do and that you love to do, and that's going to be a huge determinant in how successful you are. Now, I'm going to say this once, and you're probably going to hear me say it 2 or 3 more times during this webinar. Just like I said, find what you want to do, what you don't want to do. And it's very common when you get your certificate and all of a sudden you're certified to want to do it all, to want to be it all. But there's that old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. And you know what? The minute you start talking, people are going to know that too. Focus on one, maybe 2 things in the beginning. You can always expand. And again, I'll talk more about this and I'll give you a couple of examples. But you don't want to say you can do it all, especially when you don't have the experience to do it all. It's one thing to take a course. It's another thing to actually do it. You also want to think about who do you want to offer your services to? We talked in module 3, I think, about the fact that there's different subsets in our population, right? And for some are more comfortable in those subsets than others. For instance, some people like being around kids. Other people don't really like being around kids. Some people are more comfortable or have an interest in helping the senior community. Again, this is where you're going to want to ask yourself, who do you feel most comfortable working with and around? Do you want to do children's support groups? Do you want to stay away from families or couples? There's no one answer that's going to fit everybody. There may be times when you get that call and somebody wants you to work with children and you know you have the skills, you learned about it, but it's something you're not really comfortable with. And again, I'm going to say this now and I'll say it a couple more times, and you've heard us say it at least half a dozen times during the class. Do no harm. Not only is it best for the people out there, but it's best for you too, because people know it. They're going to know if you don't know what you're doing. You may think you're pulling that mask over their eyes, but people are really smart. And you don't want to do any harm. If you're not comfortable, if you don't have the information, don't say that you can do it. I mentioned the elevator speech, and some of you may have heard what that is. The term actually comes from, because when you get in an elevator, you're really only, in an elevator with someone for maybe 30, 45 seconds or whatever it may be. So you want to come up with a quick little message that you can share about what you do. And if someone expresses an interest, you can hand them a card. But how do we do that? This is kind of will help you figure out what you want to say to somebody to give them an idea of what you do. So you see this first thing, I help. You help who? Do you help people who are anticipating a loss? Do you help families who are anticipating a loss, children? Who is it that's your target audience? With what? So I help singles who are dealing with anticipatory bereavement or are dealing with pets at the end of life. I help seniors who don't have a lot of support. I help think about what can you say quickly that'll tell people what you're doing and buy. So I help families who have lost a pet by offering individual sessions. I help children who have lost a pet by doing children's support groups. I help veterinary professionals who work in the practice deal with compassion fatigue by offering compassion circles. Then you can start to expand on that if people ask you a question or you give them a card and maybe you'll have a phone conversation. But it's really coming up with the basics that you could talk to people about. This is one of the biggest questions you're going to have to ask yourself. Earlier, I think I might have mentioned this, and for some of you, you may think, you know what, I am ready. I have my certificate. I want to do it all. But you still have a job. You may work for a veterinary practice, or you may have a doggy daycare, or you may have another type of job. And right now, that other type of job is supporting you. And I will tell you, I ran into this, and I think I mentioned this a couple times during the class. When I first started doing this work, I was in a completely different field. But boy, I had such a passion for it, and I wanted to do this. And this is something that, again, we may have said a couple times, but I think it's worth repeating. If you think that you're going to be able to retire on what you make as a pet loss specialist, think again. You know, I mean, it's not that you can't charge money. It's not that you can't build up a business. As I said, this work is about 85 to 90% of the work that I do. I still do a little bit of consulting on the side. But I've been doing this for 14 years. But when I first started, I was working full-time as a consultant, as a marketing, organizational psychology consultant. And as much as I wanted to do it full-time, I wasn't able to. So it's really important to ask yourself, how much time do you have? If you feel like, you know, I think I can do like 15 hours a week, scale it back to maybe 8 or 9 hours a week. And then try doing that for a month and see how it feels. If it's kind of hard to do that, then maybe start doing like 5 hours a week. And then you build up to 8. And then you build up to 15. But if you're able to do 8 or 9, keep doing that and then build it up to 10. And then again, build it up to 15. But my suggestion to you is to be conservative. Remember, again, that saying, you can't pour from an empty kettle. If you're not able to pay your rent, where are you going to use your computer from? So take care of yourself first. Let's talk a little bit about marketing. Well, actually, a lot about marketing. Marketing and branding are essential. So when people see your name or logo, they're knowing what you do. Cute doesn't always work. It doesn't always make sense. We all have heard or seen those businesses where you have no idea what they're selling. That's not good. There is a store where I used to live, and it was called Shabby Chic. Now, I used to pass it, but I had no idea what they sold. Was it clothing? Is it furniture? Is it an interior design consult? I saw another business, and again, it was very cute. The owner's name was Juan, and his company was called Juan in a Million. 1 in a million what? I think it's best to be clear when you're coming up with a name. The name you choose should reflect the attribute that you want to express. Remember, it's a first impression, and you can only get one chance to make that first impression. With my business, it's Pet Loss Partners. Not really hard to figure out what I do, right? It's very straightforward. With pet loss, I would say you do need more of a serious name because it's a serious occupation. You don't want something that's perky and happy because it's not a happy business. You just watch what you name your business. And again, and I don't remember where this was, somebody told me about it, but they were looking for a euthanasia vet, and the name of their business was called Happy Ending. And my client saw that and they were like, oh no, because there is nothing happy about that. That's what I'm talking about. An important consideration into marketing is what's your budget. Determining your budget is really, really important. Like I said, this career is not about becoming rich, but it's about taking care of yourself, your service, especially initially. You're going to want to cover your expenses and maybe pocket a little bit. As your business grows, you are going to make more money. The more you take care of you and your expenses, the more you're going to be equipped to take care of your client. You cannot go into this business without spending some money. Initially, you'll need business cards. Maybe you're going to want to print off some articles. You can look online to find inexpensive options for printing. A good, reliable printing service is Vistaprint. A lot of you probably have heard of it. They frequently run services that are very cost effective. You need to figure out what's your biggest bang for your buck. What's your ROI, or you may have heard return on investment. You want to get your name out there with a minimal amount of spend, especially in the beginning. Especially today, we all need a website, right? It's almost as important as a business card. It gives credibility and it gives what exposure, and it can be very cost effective. GoDaddy has a basic website platform. There are others similar to it. In the beginning, you just may want to start with something very simple to build up your business. As you begin to grow, then maybe hire somebody to design a website for you. I had a student that actually went to a computer technology school and hired a student that was looking for experience, so it wasn't as expensive. I know there are some of you who have existing businesses and you're adding this service to it. In that case, you'd want to carefully put together a page or two describing what you're doing and adding it to your existing website. For some, you may want to go to your vet and maybe a vet will hire you. In that case, again, you would just be on their website. You wouldn't need to deal with it. Also want to talk about printing services, right? When it comes to printing, it's really important to keep in mind because printing can be very costly. You want to find printing services that can offer you a good quality product at a good price. More and more, like I said, there's services like Vistaprint that have everything. They have promotional items, they have business cards, they have brochures. A lot of good things, a lot of good ideas. Because they were successful, Office Depot and Staples started getting into the act too. And so you might be able to do it with them as well. Then there are the small printers. And I will tell you that when COVID happened, so remember I moved out from California to New Jersey. I had a wonderful printer in New Jersey, just a small printer. And I am a big proponent in supporting small businesses. For quite a while, I used this woman, even though she was in California. The benefit is that she knew me, she worked with me, she gave me different discounts that I couldn't get from a Vistaprint. She worked with my schedule that you can't get from a Vistaprint. So that's something, especially when you're starting out, if you know somebody, if you're in a marketing group and there's somebody who says that they are a printer, maybe you want to work with them and see how you can work together with the best prices as well. And then we talked a little bit about it, but it's the business card. Although I think websites are important to get your name out there, I think business cards may still be a little bit more important. They establish credibility. On the business card, you can have your degree and certification. We do recommend not putting a lot of information on it. You don't want to let it to be so busy that people can't really see what you do. Put your name on it, put your phone number on it, your website, your company name, just basic information so it doesn't get too crowded. If there's room and you've got a really short message, you may want to put that on. Business cards are great for the ability, again, of wide exposure. Some vet offices may allow you to put your business card there. You go to networking events, it's a good place. And they could be very cost effective, again, especially a place like Vistaprint. They're always having deals. I don't know if any of you have seen rack cards. I use rack cards. Rack cards are about the size of a brochure, but they don't open up. It's just a front and a back. Pet Loss Partners has different rack cards on a few different topics like pet loss and seniors, memorializing your pets, children and pet loss, anticipatory bereavement. It gives you an opportunity to put a few brief paragraphs on the back and still how to get in contact with you. I have found that veterinary offices really like these. I used to put them in a few doggy daycare places that I work with. They're also not very expensive. And again, it gives you that opportunity to get more information than a business card, but not as much as a brochure. And they can really be very cost effective as well, depending where you go. Then we talk about promotional items, and I don't know how many of you have been to those conferences where they have that expo kind of, and there's probably at least 100 companies. Please be sure that you're on mute. Please be sure that you're on mute, okay? So you know, every booth that you go to will give you a tchotchke, and then you get home and you get, you go back to your room and you're ready to pack and you can't fit your clothes in because you have your whole suitcase full of this stuff. And then you bring it home and you're like, what am I going to do with this? Right? They can be wonderful promotional items, but they are also very expensive. You really want to think about what you want to give away, why you're giving it away, when you're giving it away. You need to ask if it serves a purpose. With promotional items, to get any type of price discount, you're going to need to buy a lot of them. With my brother's business, when he wanted t-shirts printed, he had to do a minimum of, I think, like 40. And then he had to figure out what sizes and things. If you do decide to get promotional items, especially those freebies that you're going to give away, make sure it's an item that people are going to want. Like I said, that they're not going to go home and then just throw it in the trash or give it to their toddler to play around with, or their dog if it's a rubber thing. There's nothing worse too than handing something out and watching people throw it away. I would definitely suggest that you work with a local promotional company. I would not go online for that. You're going to get a better deal from somebody in your community that does their own screen printing, and you'll be able to develop a relationship with a local vendor and they'll help you out. If you're on a website, they'll get, so in other words, if you're working with Vistaprint and doing a promotional item, they're going to get to you when it's your turn in the queue. With a local vendor, they'll work with you again more. Don't forget to think about your ROI, your return on investment, especially in the beginning. It's very, very important. So before we go into spreading the message, we're going to just pop here and see if there are any questions, thoughts, disagreements, agreements, experiences that you want to share.
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Connie. I'm going to go ahead and see you before and make you my co-pilot.
I can stay till 5.
Okay. He'll be my co-pilot till 5. Anybody have anything? I like your earrings, Connie.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, good, Kim. Thanks. And we're only about a third of the way through. Anybody else? Again, I kind of wonder, nobody has their face up there. Is like, oh, do you recommend any kind of insurance? Yes, I do. And I would talk to your insurance agent about it. That's a whole other topic. There's umbrella policies there. In the beginning, you really probably only need liability, especially if you're doing an in-person group somewhere. But I would talk to your insurance agent about that, and they'll let them know what you want to do, and they'll be able to help you with that.
And if you're running a group like mine at the Seattle Animal Shelter, it's covered under their insurance, but they have their city lawyers wrote a very robust waiver, and I think we talked about that too, just in case someone leaves and then goes and commit suicide and their family says, well, what did you say to them in that group? So yeah, so if you're employed, like it's your vet office or whatever, then you can often be under theirs.
Yeah, and again, if you are going to do an in-person group, if you're not an employee of the practice, I know Andrea just mentioned that, they're most likely going to want you to have liability insurance. It's like a slip and fall thing. It's almost like I just moved into this apartment. I had to get $100,000 worth of insurance. Yeah. I mean, it's only $100 that it costs, but it's like, yeah, they make you get apartment insurance and it's like crazy, Connie.
Wow.
Yeah. Release the liability forms. I never did that. Connie, did you ever have to do that?
It's just through the Seattle Animal Shelter, and that's just because people look at a government entity as deep pockets, and so they're might most likely to be sued, but no, not as a. I don't have people sign release forms.
Now, I mean, what I do have, and maybe you have something like this too, Connie, is when you come to my support group, when I do an individual session with you, there is a form that kind of says what the groups are and are not, and it clearly says this is not therapy.
Yeah.
Same thing with an individual session. I make them sign something that's like, okay, I know this is pet loss support. Even when they pay through PayPal, when I send them a request, when it says, what is this for? I clearly put on PayPal too, pet loss support only.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way that, you know, it's not through insurance, but it's a way of protecting ourselves. So, okay, is that it? Or,
I don't see anything.
oh, wait,
Oh, Cindy says, interested in doing children sometimes. Could you do family? I want to work with adults as well. Possibly once a month regular, also once a month have more kids focused like art therapy. I think, did we talk about children not having very many children in our groups?
I think
we did.
so, yeah.
Yeah. In my experience, I really haven't had very many kids. Quite a few couples. But I think I had a 14-year-old, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, Cindy, just because of what Connie read, and maybe I am misconstruing it wrong, but again, it's just something that we really, really, really suggest. One thing at a time, right? You want to
Yeah.
pick one of those. You don't want to do all of them at once. Pick one, and then go to another, and then go to another. And again, as we go through the webinar, I'm going to share a couple of stories with you where we've had students not take our advice and call us really in tears that somebody wants them to do something that they just can't do or not able to do, or it's too much. And again, we talk about compassion fatigue and burnout. That's not what you want. Slow and steady. What is the turtle wins the race or something?
Yeah. Put your big toe in and then the next toe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also talked about starting facilitating a support group first before going into individual counseling. I mean, it really is a good way for you. You're just honing your skills and building your toolbox.
Absolutely. Okay. Go back. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about spreading your message. You are responsible, right, for getting the word out there on what you offer. And you may be thinking, I know that a pet loss business is something that people really need. So why should I spend time or money or effort on spreading the word about it? The answer is simple, especially with service businesses like pet loss support. You may think more people know about it than they actually do, but don't assume that. Again, I will quickly tell you that and I'm a Jersey girl, and then I moved to California for 30 years, and then I moved back to New Jersey, and I'm about an hour outside of New York City. And number one, the lifestyle is much more different than I thought it was, but I cannot tell you, and I live, and I'll share this information, we know each other well. I live near Princeton, which is a college preppy town. And the number of people who are like, I never heard of that, astounds me a little bit. I would have thought that it would have been a little bit more well known. Even some of the vets didn't really think about doing it around here. So So don't think that just because it's a city or a college town that people are gonna know what it is. Come on, computer, work with me here. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna talk about is listings. And there are many opportunities for listing to get your name out there. We have a few things on here, and I'll talk a little bit more about them. Oops, I'm sorry. I wanted to mention something here, and I can't find what it was that I wanted to mention. But I put a big note for myself here now. But listen, a simple Google search is an easy way to find places to get listed. There's online listings, veterinary schools, pet organizations, pet businesses. Starting out by just talking to your local vet or one or two local veterinarians is a great way to start, or an animal shelter or an animal rescue. But again, be aware of what you're able to do. We can't stress it enough. You don't want to throw out this big net like for me, even moving back here, and I have 14 years of experience in this field. I wasn't going to say, I'm going to let everybody in New Jersey know that I'm here now. No, I kind of started in my small area, and then people kind of told other people about it, and I'm venturing out into other little areas. But we've been through the pandemic, and I've been here now going on 4 years. So start small. In terms of veterinary schools, there may be veterinary schools in your area, and they may have a resource section on their website. A good place to see if you could be listed, right? You may want to call. I would say don't call every vet school in the country. But if there is one in your area, even like a vet tech school, contact them and let them know what you do. Let them see, maybe there's some kind of referral service that you can work with them. Same thing with the pet organizations. Start slow. If you work with a veterinary school, you may have vets that go to that school kind of look at the listings and contact you, and they may want to refer people to you eventually too. There may be a pet sitter organization around you. There's a couple of big pet sitting organizations, but they also have local branches. Again, would I go to the big headquarters? Not when I first start out and I really don't know what I'm doing, because these people really know. They'll be able to tell how serious or how well established you are. But maybe go to a local chapter of a pet sitting organization. Maybe contact some pet sitters in your area. Start again, and I know I said we're going to mention this a lot. Start slow and go from there. The online, there are listings like that you can put. Google is a good place to start, but you want to keep in mind your return on investment there. There are some online websites, and I'm trying to think of, Connie, what's the one that you have?
Petworks.
Petworks.
Yeah.
You can list your information there. I think another one is petloss.net will allow you to list your information, just your name. If you want more information, you have to pay. So those are examples of where you can do it online.
And Petworks, I'll put my listing in the chat. Petworks not only just lists you, but it can take care of bookings, and it also takes care of payment. So you set up your payment information in Stripe, and then you get and so when someone is looking for a grief counselor, there's several, and they send you a message, and you can get a text that you've got a message and an email, so you can respond right away. And then you can respond to the person, and then they book you and pay you through that platform. They also have a video chat or video programs, but I haven't used that yet. I just set my meetings up using Zoom. So it's actually pretty slick. They take 15% of what you charge, which, considering how much it costs to Google advertise, it's not bad.
Okay, so I went a little bit ahead of myself. We did talk about veterinary schools and pet organizations. Let's talk about events. And there's a few different types of events on here. You see pet fairs, animal welfare fundraisers, networking, and meetup. And I'll talk a little bit about each one of those. In terms of pet fairs and animal welfare fundraisers, especially now as people are getting out more and this time of year too, and in the fall, there are these pet fairs, right? Best Friends may have them, other rescues may do them, cities may do them. And you've probably been to them where they have different veterinary hospitals there. They have people selling cute little shirts and socks and every little tchotchke you could imagine. Sometimes they'll have like dog groomers there. They'll give you half price on a dog grooming thing. So Pet Loss Partners used to do in California quite a lot of pet fairs. There's good and there's bad about pet fairs. And I would always say before you book yourself into a pet fair, because you do have to book your space, do some research and see how many people have attended their last events or ask them. Check out where it's going to be held, right? Because they're not cheap. Some of them will charge you for a space and charge you for a tent to put up. We did so many at one point that we actually bought our own little tent and table and chairs, so we didn't have to pay for it. Another downside to it is it's a lot of work. You've got to get there early and set up and take down at the end of it, and a lot of them won't let you leave until it's absolutely done. And I'm saying the downfalls first, and then I'll say a couple perks. The other downfall too is that, so I said the name of my company is Pet Loss Partners, right? And we had this big, beautiful banner that said Pet Loss Partners on a little logo, and people would literally see, and so on our table we had, brochures, business card, rack cards, and then we had these cute little giveaways that were not like really grief related, but it was like a dog angel pin and a cat angel pin. And people would see Pet Loss Partners and they'd literally like shake their heads like, oh no, and like turn and walk the other way. It's almost like, nope, my dog doesn't die, and so probably somebody who's selling cute little t-shirts might get a little bit more exposure. We did actually get clients from it. We did get some exposure. Probably the best part of it is that you get to network with some of the other tables there, like the dog groomers, the vet hospitals. You exchange business cards and things. So that really is the biggest perk to it. As you could tell, I'm not a huge fan of them. Some people really like doing them and some people do okay with them. If you're a dog groomer who's doing pet loss work it may be a really good place if you're a doggy daycare facility, if, you know, or a cat rescue or something. That's probably a better idea because again, it's added on to something that people may be attracted to come up to you with, right? The fundraisers I think are much more effective. And so I'll give you an example where I got Faith from. Was a rescue, and twice a year, once a year, I don't remember. They did a big silent auction. I think they like a holiday bazaar silent auction kind of thing. And they had a raffle. And so what we would do is every year we would put together a basket that could be raffled away. Now, the basket was not all pet loss related stuff. Again, we had our cards in it. We had a book that we referred at that time in it. But we also had a children's coloring book. We had some cat treats, some dog treats, a little dog toy. So people would be like, wow, this is really nice. They'd get some neat stuff on it. And we'd also get our cards and get some information. I think that's a lot better because it's more of a confined event. You know, you have pet lovers who are going there and wanting to help. And so I think you get a better audience and get a better result from it. The veterinary events, what we're talking about here is they sometimes have monthly meetings, different organizations, or they may have a conference and you may want to take a table at a conference. Now, I'm not talking really at the expo part of it, but even just a small table. Bad part is, I guess they're not cheap. They can range, you know, $800, $1,000. Good parties, you generally will get good exposure. But with these veterinary conferences, you may not have to take a table. You can do, so Pet Loss Partners, just last year, or I think it was last year, was approached by a conference, a local conference, and we did flyers like that were put into every, and I can't think of the word, not a grab bag, but you know, the little bag that they give each person that comes to their conference. So our information was put in there. They have a little newsletter, you know, and again, not cheap, but it was like, I think $400 for a quarter page. But you get, if you have 500 people going to that conference, and you get like 5 people, 10 people that call you, you know, at least it pays for that kind of thing. So it's something to think about. Just again, return on investment, especially in the beginning, start small. You probably don't want to go to a place that has 500 veterinary people in the beginning. I wouldn't want to when I was first starting out. And then if you belong to a networking group, it's a good place to go. If you're, you know, there's that meetup.com and they have every kind of interest. They have a lot of pet related interest groups that you could join. Again, you don't want to, you kind of want to get involved in the group before you start telling people what you do, like, because they won't want, if they think you're just there for business, they're not going to be very happy about it. But if it's a business networking event, that's a good place to do it, right? Let's also talk about speaking events. And I will tell you, as I said, I used to have to give presentations for my last career, and I enjoyed it. So I was comfortable with it. Not everybody is comfortable with it. If you're not, don't do it. Or if you want to try it, start out with a really small group. So there's a few different opportunities on here. We're going to talk about each of them. Veterinary professional organizations, dog and cat clubs, and community centers. I will tell you that I have done very well in terms of speaking at veterinary conferences. In the beginning, again, I would not do this for the first year of doing this work because there is a lot of exposure, which is good. But boy, people are going to know if you don't know what you're talking about. So I would get a lot of experience in what you're doing and then consider it maybe. In the beginning, you will have to reach out to veterinary conferences. There was a point pre-COVID when I was doing so many conferences that I just got asked. You know, I would get an email saying, hey, we're doing a conference here. Are you interested in speaking? I have done since COVID, then they started having these virtual conferences. I have done some. I'm starting now to go out more to different places. I will share with you that a friend of mine who has done more than I have in this area kind of said something to me that makes a little bit of sense, which is with air travel the way it is right now, the price of it, the fact that it's not the most comfortable experience as it used to be, and they're not the most organized. She does only conferences that she can drive to or take a train to. And the reason is things have gotten lost, prices have gone up. Now, again, with veterinary conferences, probably the best part about it is exposure. The downside of it is, and I won't, I mean, I guess I have to be careful about this, is some veterinary conferences pay you very well. Some veterinary conferences don't pay you at all. They'll just give you a hotel room or they'll pay for your meals. And then there's ones in between. And again, with veterinary conferences, there are a lot of expenses. You've got to have handouts. You've got to have marketing materials. You've got to have a PowerPoint present, right? Something you can use your PowerPoint on, because most places don't provide that these days. So there's a lot of expenses to it. I have been to, there's one organization that I went to 2 or 3 times because they're amazing. They paid my airfare, they paid my hotel, they gave me a per diem, and they paid me for speaking. Plus, I got to meet a lot of people. That's a really good deal. So think about it. But again, I would tell you, don't think about it for a year, 2 years. And I know some of you are in the veterinary field and maybe you've already done it. So you've got one leg up, but unless you're really comfortable, again, even if you've done it a little bit, until you're really comfortable doing this work, I would recommend that you don't speak at a veterinary conference anyway. But there are other organizations, right? There are pet sitters clubs. There are dog sitter organizations. There are pet crematory organizations. There are, I would opt again for the first year or so for local chapters. You're getting less people, but you're getting practice and you're getting a decent amount of networking and exposure. You may or may not get paid. I speak at a lot of local vet tech organizations or hospital managers organizations. Most of them don't pay you, but they'll give you lunch, they give you a chance to network, and it is a good opportunity to network. There are dog and cat clubs. I did this, I think this was probably my first few talks that I did, was at dog and cat clubs. Again, people, you've got a really captive audience. They're not going to pay you, not the biggest crowd, but really interested in what you want to have to say. And you never know who you may meet. I want to go back quickly too, because I just realized that I never mentioned this. In terms of speaking with veterinary, there are the veterinary conferences, but what you may want to, if you're really comfortable speaking, what you may want to start out doing is, again, approach your local vet. Or if there's a couple of local vets in your area. And when you go in and you say what you do, and you may want to give them your card, say, I'd be glad to talk to your staff a little bit about what I do. Give them some basic information about pet loss, because once a month they have meetings. They'll have their staff meeting. Sometimes they'll do lunch and learns. Again, you're not going to get paid for these, but you're going to get good exposure and you're going to get practice. For the lunch and learns, you'll get a couple of free pieces of pizza, but you'll get to meet a lot of good people, and you never know where it leads. So I didn't mention that, and I just wanted to bring that up. And then there are community centers, and I'll share with you. So again, since moving out here, I moved out here just weeks, I think like 3 or 4 weeks before COVID started. And I hadn't really thought about doing anything in person. Well, one of my neighbors who lives in this building works for the town. And they have a community center. And she said, can I tell my boss about what you do? He may want to have a group for seniors there. And I said, sure. Community centers are a good place. They're a great place to do a support group. So the first community center that I worked with in California, they did not charge me for the room. But I'm trying to think, there was some kind of give back. I think I did like half price for people who wanted an individual session. They let me charge for the group. The second place that I did the group, they did charge me for the room, but then they gave me for the group room, but then they gave me a free room for people who wanted individual sessions. So you could negotiate with them and see what they'll offer, but it's a really good place to start: a library, a community center. So we've talked again about how to get your name out there. And I think what I'll do is I'll stop the share for a second and see if we do have any questions about this area. I know it was kind of a lot of information too. Any experiences you've had, any of those of you in the vet field, or anything? There's always that first person and then more come. It's almost like, remember when you were in school, the teacher would say, if you have a question, ask it, and then other people would.
Oh,
Okay.
So she can't jump on the camera, but she wanted to ask about pricing. That's a good question.
And
Actually, when I went out onto PetWorks, for my and put my listing out there, I looked at everybody else's pricing and I put myself somewhere in the middle. But I was like, people were charging like $200 for a session. I'm just like, holy cow.
And we actually have a section in this webinar about pricing that we'll get to, but yes, absolutely. It's something that we will talk a little bit more about. I think we have one more section to do before we talk about that. And that usually brings up a lot of comments, that one. So, but Connie, I know, right? I mean, again, if you are a therapist, yeah, then maybe you can get away with charging that, and we'll talk about where you are and what you do and how to determine kind of thing, but we will talk more about it. But there are people who, I will share just this little story with you. I know it's a little early, because I usually share it later, but when I first started doing the group, I was doing the group at a big veterinary emergency hospital. And a woman called me. She wanted to come to the group. And she said, if I pay you or if I'm going to come, how do I know that you were going to have the group? And so I said, I that's when the group is. I don't know what you mean. And so she said, well, I contacted this lady and I'm a little concerned about you because you're only charging $20 for a group, and this lady contacted, this lady is charging $40 for a group. And she's there, but my concern is that so I paid the $40 and I wound up having to wait almost a month because this woman would only do the group with 5 or more people. And so I said, no, and I always feel like, 2 or more is a group, and especially in the beginning, I would have just 2, 3 people coming, so.
We would have one person and 2 facilitators. It was like group therapy in reverse, which we were like, the poor person's just like
But there are people who are really, like I said, in this for the money. Not that you can't do well eventually, but if you think you're gonna be, again, I charge, I'll be honest, I charge now $15 for my virtual groups, and there are a lot of people that don't want to pay that can't pay that. So, and I work with people, plus we do the chats where we don't charge, so I also offer them that as an option too. But again, well, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. We will talk. Connie, was there something again, I don't read it, but it's kind of like squirrels that pop across the screen.
Well, we got a fish on. Mako asked, it was a good place to start was volunteering for support groups. Any we would recommend to check with to see if they need volunteers. Doesn't matter if you stay local or not, if they're online. And I said, you can volunteer with us.
Yeah.
We'll poach you first before anybody else gets you.
Exactly. Exactly. If you're interested in volunteering, let us know. We absolutely.
There's always a need for volunteers. I had to cut my support group through the shelter to twice a month because there's just me and one other facilitator, and I'm just desperately looking for facilitators. And so it's
there you
just
go.
Yeah, it's been a journey, but yeah, you will never run out of places to volunteer at.
All right, well, let's continue onward. Connie, are you still good with time?
Yeah, Sharon and Phoenix are on, so I'm just
okay.
I'm doing chat at the same time. I haven't kind of, I'm checking in. So if it gets busy, I will have to log off.
Okay, fair enough.
You have that.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk about creating relationships. And this is, again, just like pricing, all of it's important, but creating relationships is very important because you don't, and I'll share this in a second, just want to just like we told you, don't spread your net really thin. You want to make sure you know a little bit about who you're working with. And so there's a few steps to that. You see them here doing the research, having that initial meeting, coming up with common goals, and following up, and we'll talk about each one. So in terms of doing the research, when you're starting to figure out, who do I maybe want to work with, you want to be careful with this. I'll share a little story with you that just happened last week, and bless his heart, I used to have a life coach, and he was very big into promoting, more like a business coach kind of, into help promoting yourself, and he sent me a text and an email saying, hey, I have this new client. She's an animal communicator. What a great person, maybe you could connect with her, and maybe you could do, like, she pays you a certain percentage and you pay her a certain percentage. And I was like, whoa. And I didn't want to insult him, and I said, okay, for sure, I'll contact her. But I mean, that would be the last, not that I don't believe in animal communicators, I do, but I'm not going to be referring my clients to an animal communicator unless it's something that they specifically brought up. That's kind of a little bit about what I'm talking about here too. It's finding those people really that you connect with. And again, you don't want to, so let's say you say, I want to reach out to in-home euthanasia vets. Start within like 10-20 miles. You don't want to reach out to every in-home euthanasia vet at once, because here's what's going to happen. Nobody's going to call you at first, and you're like, see, Sandy said not to do it, and I did it, and now a lot of people have my name. And then all of a sudden, you're going to start, within a week or two, you're going to start getting 10, 20, 30, 40 people, and you're not going to be able to handle it. And that's what I'm talking about. We've had, I can think of at least 3 or 4 people saying, I know I shouldn't have done it, but this is what I do, and I can't handle it. I would have to do 4 groups in a week, or the vets want me to do this, and I've never done it before. So start locally. But in terms of doing the research too, even before you reach out to your local vets or your local in-home euthanasia vets, look at their website. Try to find out a little bit about them. Maybe see any reviews about them, because you want people who are aligned with what you believe. You want to look at the website and say, yeah, this is like a person that I would be attracted to. This is a person that I would want to go to, or I would want to refer somebody to. That's what I'm talking about, doing the research. And again, I hate Yelp. I call Yelp the garden of complaints, right? Because either companies are paying people to write good things about them, or people write horrible things, and then you kind of have to balance it out. But if you might even want to check with the SBA, you might want to check with a local vet organization and kind of see what their reputation is. That's what I'm talking about. You want to find people who really align with your beliefs and what you want to do. And you want to find websites that you'd be proud to be listed on their website. So again, that's what we're talking about. Don't just jump in and reach out to everybody. But when you do reach out to people, that's where you want to have that initial meeting, right? And for a long time, we were doing Zoom meetings. Now people are kind of meeting in person, and I really like that meeting in person. I believe in sitting down with somebody, and you could do it through Zoom too, being able to look at somebody in the eye, having a cup of coffee with them, hearing about their background. How did they get started in the business? Again, what type of work are they doing? Who do they want to work with? What are their beliefs about pet loss, right? If you get a vet who says, I always, after somebody loses their pet, I give them the name of this rescue so that they could go in and find another dog, because I really believe that's what you should do. Somebody you may not want to work with, because as we all know, we don't, again, I'm not saying you never want to get another pet, but we certainly don't want to give them two cards, one being our pet loss card and another being for a rescue, right? So that's somebody that you may not align with. So talk to them, see how it feels to be around them, see if their core values are what your core values are. Kind of similar to what I'm just saying, you want to make sure, whoops, come on, computer. You want to make sure that you have those common goals. We talked about common goals in Module 10, right? When I approach a new business or veterinary practice, I do so completely on one side of it. So I will ask them, how can I help you? How can I help you improve in the area of pet loss? What needs do you have relative to pet loss and bereavement? Again, right, the open-ended questions to kind of see what they're looking for. What needs do you have that's relative to what they're looking for? And let them know that you are on their side. Let them know you're not just trying to get clients from them, but that you're really trying to serve their clients and their practice and support their clients and their practice. That's really important. And you know what? That's the kind of relationship that'll be long lasting. And then follow up. And again, we talked about follow up in Module 10, and I think it's just as important when it comes to marketing and things like that. After your initial contact, this is what I try to do. I will send a handwritten thank you note. No one does handwritten thank you notes anymore. Everybody does email. I will, especially if it's somebody that I'm really impressed with and want to work with, I'll send them a handwritten thank you note, because that's going to make you stand out a bit, because nobody does it. Keep it short, keep it concise. Thank them for taking the time to talk to you. Tell them what you liked about meeting them in their business. Make a positive comment about it. Offer your services again. Be sure to include your business card. You don't want to, again, you don't want to include your contact. You don't want to forget to include your contact. That's not very good, because people may have lost your business card. So it's perfectly fine to put a business card in there. But you do want to follow up, in terms of when. I wouldn't wait too long. I would do it within that first week of meeting them. So now we're going to get to pricing. This is a really touchy subject. It could be uncomfortable. When we'll give you some suggestions. Time can change some of these things as well. But more than anything else, you need to stay true to who you are. Okay, so these are some guidelines, some suggestions. Definitely feel free to throw out ideas or questions with us, but know in the end it's a really personal choice. I'm going to talk about some considerations. What services am I providing? And am I providing it full or part-time? We talked about this earlier, right? When we're first starting out, you're making an investment in your business. You just made an investment in this class. So you want to, if nothing else, at least recoup what you've put into it. Again, unless you're already working for a practice or the practice paid for the course. You also want to consider, am I doing this full or part-time? And that's going to have an effect on what you may want to charge. How much do you need to make it worth your while? And we'll talk about that next. And again, here's where we talk about what are my costs. It's really important when you're coming up with a pricing structure that you look at what cost you've incurred. I used to, when I was in California, and I've said it to you a few times, and I think honestly part of it was that I was younger and less afraid. Now I'm older and more afraid. I used to go to people's homes. I would talk to them on the phone and I'd be like, oh yeah, all right. And I would do individual sessions in people's homes because I didn't have an office. And I actually, the woman I worked with, Connie, you remember Ellie, once she found out I was doing that, I always had to text her the name of the person, the address when I was going, and their telephone number. And I kind of felt a little
She was like, she was our mother.
yeah. So she never really liked that I did that. And like I said, I mean, I didn't really do my research, it was like, oh, well, I actually can come to your home. Oh, okay. And I didn't know where I was going, but so yeah, probably not the best idea, but sometimes I would travel 30, 45 minutes, especially in LA. You're already driving 2 miles if you travel if it takes you half an hour. So what is my gas? What is my car usage? What is my time worth? If I'm doing Zoom, what does it cost me to do Zoom? And again, what is my time worth? These types of things have to be considered. You do want to, if nothing else, get your money back, but there's nothing wrong with making some money. It's a personal choice. Some people just want to do it because they want to do it. Others want to do it as part of their business or as their primary business. You also want to consider, what will the market bear? What do I mean by that? Well, you need to know who are your clients in terms of location. So when I lived in LA, in one area, there was Beverly Hills. I could charge $100, and it was also a different time. The economy was really, really good, and I was in a good area. I also helped people in downtown LA where it wasn't such a good area. I knew they weren't going to pay that. So what would the market bear? Who are your customers? It's important when thinking about the price. You also need, Connie mentioned it, you need to think about what other people are paying. In LA, there were probably 3 or 4 other counselors within a 50-mile radius. I knew what other people were charging, and that did make a consideration for me. Probably when I first was starting out also, I was working full-time, so I didn't have to worry about charging a lot of money. I've always, I'll be honest, been on the low end of the scale. Again, that lady charged $40 for a group. To me, that was crazy, but she got away with it. And so I guess if, and we're gonna talk about this in a moment, if she felt good with herself, then okay. But you have to be realistic thinking about what you're putting out, what you've put into it, who else is providing the service, who are your clients. And then this is the last part, which is what feels right. I could kind of talk about this for an hour. What feels right and are you valued? Probably the 2 most important questions. I did work for a while with a woman who didn't charge anything for her even her individual clients, and that felt right for her. That being said, her family owned about 6 or 7 grocery stores, and she worked part-time for them. So money wasn't really a big concern for her. There are more people doing this. There are nonprofits that are doing this now, and they don't charge. That's okay. That's okay for them. It's about doing some soul searching and really saying, what am I comfortable with, taking into consideration my cost, what feels right to me. You're going to have to look at the question and also say to yourself, am I valued charging that? Let's say that someone in your area is charging $70 for a 1-hour session, and there's someone charging $45 for a 1-hour session. If your costs are close to the amount you charge, how valued do you feel? You need to ask yourself that. In the 10 years, well, 14 years now that I've been doing this, I'm going to say maybe 3 or 4 people have actually complained about me charging. You know, again, I honestly don't think it's more than a handful of people. And when you think about it, right, if you were going to reach out to a therapist, you can't call them and say, I've been feeling so depressed. I'd like to make an appointment. All right, that will be $100. You're going to charge me $100 when I'm depressed? Or if you're getting divorced, you know, my friend just went through a divorce and spent, you don't want to know what she spent, but a lot of money on legal fees. It would be like calling that lawyer and saying, my husband told me I need to get out, I need to get a divorce. Okay, it's $500 an hour. Wait, I just said my husband's mean to me. You're going to charge me? Again, they went to school for this. They have an office. So think about that part of it too. And if you're really like, I don't need to charge, I don't want to charge, that's okay. I'm just kind of trying to give you both sides of it. I also want to talk about the cost of free. And years ago, I went to this, I'm going to say it was probably the 2nd year that I was doing this work. And I went to a veterinary conference, and there was a woman in the marketing part of it that did a talk on the cost of free. And this woman was a therapist, and she decided, I think, or something like, yeah, she was a therapist. And then decided that she wanted to work in the veterinary field, and I think she actually started working with a veterinary practice and then became a veterinary social worker. But she talked about the fact that when she was a therapist, there were some people, especially in the first few years when she started out, that she knew were really struggling. And so she would charge them half of what she would charge the other people. But what she started to find was that the people who she was getting full price for, they were there on time. They always called to cancel. And they never, when she said we only have a few minutes left, they never took advantage of that. They were respectful with her boundaries. The people who she was charging less with, they wouldn't call to cancel. They would just not show up. When it was time to wrap up, they just kept on talking. And I've heard other people say this too. So since going to that workshop, that when people think they're going to get something for free, it's like, oh, it's for free or it's half cost. So what do I have to respect those boundaries for? And so again, it's just something to think of. I've tried to give you both sides of it. There's nothing wrong if you really are in that position and you can do it for free and you're retired or you want to do it for free. Nothing wrong with that either. But there's nothing wrong if you need to, want to charge. There's nothing wrong with that either.
McCall put in chat that people often don't value things or services that are free as much as when they pay for it. It's a psychological thing. And
Yeah.
that's true. And us therapists, you know, we find that when someone is paying out of pocket versus having insurance pay for it, they're going to work a lot harder than the people who, you know, insurance is basically free, work a lot harder than the people who are just you know, getting a free ride, so to speak.
Yeah, and we're at this last thought, and I'll just think about, ask you to think about a lot of this again. The two biggest things I would say: do no harm and start slow. You absolutely could kind of at least add to what you're doing, and after a while you could build up a reputation. It could be something. Again, I first started out with one support group, then it went to two support groups, then it went to individual sessions, then it went to working in the veterinary field and doing compassion fatigue work, then it went to speaking, then it went to doing this class. So, there's different options out there for you. So let's go ahead and go to questions, comments. Was there something that was, I saw a little squirrel.
Yeah, Cassidy just said, and this is a good idea, never put complimentary anything, put a price and discount it down to zero if you want, but still show it costs something. Yeah, that's
Yeah. Good point.
and you know, my group at the animal shelter is free because it is a city organization, and but I often had people who donated to the shelter. We have a foundation and would donate to the shelter money or bring in, you know, if they had extra things from their pet. So, you know, that was, and I think people, it makes them feel better to do that. And so it was a win-win.
Yeah, and Connie, it's just like the chats, right? I mean, they're free. We do ask, say if you're able to, if you can donate something. And a couple of times we've gotten some pretty big, like somebody donated like $200 or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
And maybe they meant to do two and an extra couple of, no.
it's like,
Yeah, because then someone asked that and I said, you know, we tell them we're all volunteers, you know, we're not being paid to facilitate the chat, but the program's not free and advertising isn't free.
Yeah,
And
I mean, we do quite a bit of advertising, so.
yeah, so that's your cost. Understand your costs. Because yeah, you're not, Zoom is not free unless you want to just have half-hour meetings.
Yeah,
So yeah, you do have costs.
we have, just today I had to deal with our website guy and give him a good chunk of money that goes for a
Boy.
certain period of time. Keeping the lights on, yeah.
Exactly. And
Anybody?
that is one nice thing about, you know, being on, having your office virtual. You're not having to pay for a
Yeah,
which nowadays it ain't cheap.
yeah,
There are some things, and I had this in Seattle when I had my private counseling practice. It wasn't pet loss. There are a lot of shared office, and
yeah.
this was one, and it was for therapists or you know, it was, you know, there weren't any like attorneys there. It was all for, you know, if you were a therapist or a nutritionist or whatever. And it was just a really nice space. And you just went on a calendar and you booked your time, and it was secure, it was quiet, it was set up, it had a noise machine, you know, and so it was all set up for therapists. So, you know, depending on the size of the city you live in, that
Yeah.
option as well. It's a great resource.
Any other comments, thoughts, questions?
Are you guys just relieved that it's almost over?
Libraries, yeah.
Yeah, they'll let you use a
So I will let you know a couple things because we had oh, thanks. So we're gonna do like a little graduation group call. I'm gonna hold off until you all get your module 10s in, because I think that's probably top on your mind right now. But we're gonna do a little call where we'll answer any questions. I had two people in their assignments or the emails that were interested in talking about how to deal with difficult, and they mentioned a few euthanasia situations. Like one mentioned behavioral euthanasia, or people who don't have um, a lot of money. So we can definitely talk more about that. And again, I think it's really too, and we'll share more about this as at the end of it. We hope that this is just the beginning of a relationship with you. I will be starting, I thought it was going to start September, but I'm going to probably have to start it. It might be mid-September, and I did this for a little while and it was kind of popular. A monthly kind of get together where we could talk about either business related things or you know, questions on pet loss. So I'm gonna try to start that. I'm gonna say probably mid to late September again. Okay. Yeah. It's been a really good class. It has. I know it sounds like, you all really care and want to make a difference, and good. Okay, so I'll ask Connie to stay, but have a good rest of the evening, everyone. I will get this recording out to you uh, tomorrow.
No more 7 p.m. Sunday night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're just watching your inbox, like, oh, what is it gonna be this time?
I know my family is always like, can you come over for dinner now? I'm like, there's 6 weeks, and because we have like a 6-week period where we recruit and kind of get things ready, and that's when my Sunday nights are free. So all right, everybody, have a good evening.